For information on today's topic and more, check out thecheerdoc.com. Ready? 5, 6, 7, 8.
Hey guys, and thank you so much for joining. If you haven't already, find the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to our podcast and subscribe. We'd love to have you follow us so you get notifications and you're up to date with the newest and most recent topics that we're discussing on the podcast. So this week, there was some discussion that was taking place around the country through the cheer world about a team up in New Jersey that enacted a all-inclusive policy or an all-inclusive description for their team. The story that came out was that after a tryout, there were some of the athletes that tried out that did not make the team and were upset and told their parents about what had happened. And the parents approached the athletic director of the high school, and because of the outrage from the parents and the athletes, the school decided to create an all-inclusive team. And it upset a lot of people around the world. It created ripples throughout the cheer world. And so one of the things that we want to talk about when we look at this, all-inclusivity or inclusivity when it comes to the sport, there's a couple of sides to the story. Number one, we don't want to exclude anyone who is interested in trying or becoming part of a cheerleading team or organization or group. We don't want to eliminate people's ability to try cheer. Some of our best athletes that have ever done this sport, stumbled across cheer maybe later in life. You think about some of the higher level collegiate male athletes. A lot of these guys, didn't find cheerleading until later. And so we don't want to eliminate the opportunity for people to do cheer. But what we want to do is continue to uphold the standards that we set for the sport to allow people to partake in certain areas of it. Now, as the story has evolved and continues to evolve, what has come out recently is that the team actually had, or the school actually had, 3 levels of participation when it came to the cheerleading program. And what their response to the backlash that they got from the cheer community was that instead of making it quote-unquote all-inclusive, what they did was they made some of the, lower-level teams more open. So there were more spots to fulfill the need for these athletes that weren't up to the skill level for the higher teams. So like an ABC team, the A would be your top tier cheerleaders, and then C would be your bottom tier. So they opened up more spots in one of the lower tier groups. Now that wasn't obviously part of the story that initially broke. This is the team responding, and that again, and even that argument raises some criticism as to, is that really what happened, or is this, the school and this athletic director backtracking to try to cover their tracks, so to say, or cover up what actually happened because of the amount of negativity. But in any light, the baseline argument here is that there were athletes that did not meet a standard of skill, and instead of accepting that they did not reach that level, we allowed them to complain, essentially, and gain a spot on a team. And whether you agree in an all-inclusivity or what have you, that alone does not set a good precedent, not only for that team, but for that athlete in general. Cheerleading is a sport. It is something that athletes work hard to be better at. And beyond the physical athleticism, it's also something that teaches our young people about perseverance, hard work, responsibility, and dedication to something that they love. And if we start to take away, even in a small scale, start to take away the importance of dedication to their craft, that does not set that athlete up to be in a better place for the long run in life. It sets a bad precedent that instead of having to work for something, they can simply complain that they didn't get it handed to them or they weren't good enough, and that standards will be lower. And I know that's hard to hear for some people, and it sounds harsh, and it's not meant to be harsh. It's simply meant to be straightforward and blunt. You know, there are things in life that we aren't going to be the best at. There are things in life that we may have to work harder for. But if we allow the argument that if we create enough uproar that it will be given to us, then unfortunately that creates a negative standard and devalues or devolves the activity that we're talking about. You know, and one of the arguments that we made that we were discussing was, you know, if you have this quote-unquote all-inclusive team for cheer, you know, what about the other activities at the school? You know, does football now become an all-inclusive? Does basketball, does baseball? Do these other activities become all-inclusive, or do we allow lower-level teams to permit everyone to be a part? And where that fall, you know, where we start to get into some trouble with that is, you know, number one, the psychological effect that has as, you know, you don't really have to work, we'll find a spot for you. That's huge. But secondarily, you know, we have to talk about, you know, if you're applying to schools or you're applying for jobs and things like that, and all of a sudden you're padding a resume or an application with things that you didn't really have to earn, you may present yourself in a false light, which on a gigantic scale, and I recognize this is a big scale, but on a big scale, we're sending people into the workforce with, you know, fake credentials. And that's not only going to devalue the activities that they didn't earn a right to claim, but it's also going to give a false description of who this person is. And, you know, I think, you know, if I owned a business and I looked at a resume or an application of two different people and I saw one that was loaded with, you know, extracurriculars and different sports they were involved with and groups and things like that, that person is going to stand out to me as an employer more than someone who didn't. But if this person didn't earn those rights or the spot to get those credentials, I may give that person a position, you know, ahead of someone else that may be a better candidate, but because they didn't pad their resume with things they didn't earn, you know, I overlooked them. So it's a much bigger thing to think about, and I know it's hard to we don't want to say, you know, it's going to change the world in a negative way. I mean, and I get that. That's really extrapolating a lot. But on the level that is actually applicable to the athletes and people, the young people that we have in front of us, we can't let them, you know, set them up for, this thought process of, even though I didn't meet the standard for this particular group or team or whatever, that it's okay, I still deserve to be there. When, you know, it's hard to hear sometimes, but no, you don't. You know, and that goes for anything across the board. There are standards for a reason. And so when we look at our sport, instead of devaluing it to allow people, you know, more people to do it, let's find the compromise and say, yes, everyone deserves the right to do the sport, but if we set a standard for a team or a program or whatever the case may be, let's stick to our guns and uphold that standard. There are other ways that people can do cheer, whether it's, through spirit programs or, open gyms and things like that they can work on becoming a better cheer athlete. But let's not take away from the hard work that others have done to earn a spot on a team that they're going to represent and compete with. So, as this story has evolved, I've had some great friends and great connections reach out, and in fact, one of them is going to be joining us very, very soon for an interview to discuss the USA Para Cheer Team that was just competing at Worlds or at the ICU not too long ago. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that to be considered an Olympic sport, you have to have a Paralympic partner in that sport. So where cheer is almost pretty much ready to go, the one thing that we have to make sure all of our countries that are representing have is a functioning and well-established para team. Can't wait to get this interview with him, because the way he looks at it and the way he presents it is a much different light. His opinion is we're using the wrong terminology when it comes to inclusivity versus skill dependent, things of that nature, because some of the newer teams and newer programs that are emerging, like the para teams for these, Olympic level teams, there is some gray area when it comes to all inclusivity, all inclusive, skill dependent, things like that. And I cannot wait till, to introduce you guys to him, to allow him to explain from a different standpoint and a different argument how inclusivity can actually benefit a program. So completely 180, contrasting philosophy, contrasting ideology, that I really, really, really cannot wait to hear and to share with you all. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast. Again, whatever platform you follow us on, find us on other social media platforms, because we're doing, things like videos, instructional stuff, things that we cannot do on a podcast, and make sure that you're up to date with the latest things that are coming out. If there's anything we can help you with specifically, shoot us an email, thecheerdoc@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us. Be sure to check out thecheerdoc.com for more content. Also, if you found the material today valuable, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It's very much appreciated. Thanks for listening, and have an incredible day.